Welcome in to another Humankind review video. I'm taking you through a game today that I finished on the Twitch stream back when I was playing Humankind still on Friday nights over live on the Twitch stream. This game, we tried to execute a very specific strategy that I'd come up with that I thought, well, I don't know if it will be good, but there's possibility for it to be good. And, you start testing out different wild strategies when you've been playing a game for over 2 years. And so this was a strategy that I decided to test that relied on garrisons. I wanted to make garrisons the focal point of my entire strategy. So picking cultures that focus on garrisons, picking things like different pieces of the puzzle as far as civics, religion, tenets, all of those things, focused on making garrisons kind of the central hub of what I did in my empire. We are, of course, again playing on Humankind difficulty and seeing if the Garrison Strat can carry us through to a victory in a game. It can't. At least not the way that I executed it, although we'll talk about where I think it went wrong and how I think that we can possibly maybe improve upon the Garrison strategy for future games if you were to take that strategy into account. Let's jump into the game and take a look at how the Garrison strategy went in Humankind. Here we are in our capital city of Mycen. Here, you can immediately notice a problem, I'm sure, if you've seen any of my Humankind videos and you've seen population numbers in my capital at the end of a game. Turn 295, which is way deep into a game, like way deep into a game. And our population in our capital is only 45. That's problematic because that's a population that you should probably be hitting like halfway through your game. This is at the very end. I will tell you our population was substantially higher at one point, and it has now dropped to astronomically low numbers. You can also see across the top here, Plosif has vassalized nearly everybody. It is just me and Nox here that are left in non-vassalized statuses. And Plosif actually at this point has won the game on turn 294. Plosif ended the game and had the most fame. Here is the fame numbers at the end. You can see 23.8 thousand fame to 23.5. I was right on the cusp of getting Plosif. I actually had crossed into first place for a short period of time. I had desperately tried to end the game and find an end game condition that would work for me. It did not work out that way. I thought I could hold it out, but I could not. Look at this map, and I want to show you the map first before I tell you how this all happened and go over the Garrison Strat with you. Look at this map. Here's my initial starting area. Here is Plosif's initial starting area. We shared a continent. Burley was also on this continent off to the side. You can see that Burley was basically bumped off the continent by Plosif and forced to kind of be on the New World. This is the New World, and Burley now has most of his land is on the New World, and you can see how sporadic the New World has become. But look at Plosif's land and everyone else's land. And I will tell you, my land was all connected at one point. Plosif's land was all connected at one point. Everybody's land looked normal until we got to the contemporary era. Look at all the, the colorations. You get, just pockets of places everywhere. Look at, what is even happening on this map? You've got cities that are completely isolated from each other. I got cities way down here. This was kind of a last-ditch effort for me. There's a bunch of free peoples down here, and so I was like, I just started snapping up people and trying to, build more cities and try to get more fame stars towards the end. But you could quickly see, outside of basically this continent, which is where Jumbo Pixel and Nox started, everything is really discombobulated. And I will show you exactly why, and this is something that I've talked about before. When we got to the contemporary era at the very beginning, on the geopolitical spectrum, we hit this. All the way on this side, if you go towards the homeland side of geopolitical, there is a status that the entire world will go under that is called plus 100% war score. This status is absolutely game-changing, dare I say game-breaking. It turns wars into utter and complete chaos. And it doesn't matter if you're actually fighting wars actively through battle or if you're just using leverage to end your wars, it doesn't really matter. It creates chaos. What happens is, because you effectively have doubled your usual war score that allows you to make claims and vassalize people and do all of those things, you can make the most outrageous claims onto other people's land. So, to give you an example of how this played out, my border with Plosif was right here, right along this edge, and I ended up taking over a COD. It was a Free People's. So we had this border was set right here. And it was just a lovely border. We had maintained that border. You can see I actually had started building. Here's all the garrisons. I had started building just garrisons everywhere along my border. And that was one of our goals at one point. You can see it in a couple different places. I was going to try to surround our empire in garrisons. And you can see on the map, see all the walls? All the walled spots? See all the garrisons all over the place, dotted around the line? There's a lot of garrisons. We'll talk about that in a second. The most interesting kind of component to all of this was when we hit that 100% war score, Plosif declared war on me. Rightfully so. We'd been waiting for this almost the entire game. And in hindsight, should I have probably taken the war to him earlier in the game? Obviously, I was playing a bunch of different war-based types of people at the very beginning. We should have gone to early war. We didn't. We had set a pretty nice border. We had some pretty good land. You can see our land was we got resources, we had wonders, we had all kinds of great stuff in our land that was already working out well for us. I think we have Everest up here. So we had a lot of good things going for us, and we'd set a nice border. What happened was, with 100% war score, Plosif won the first war and took over basically everything up here and then across down here. Just the cities were left. Like, he took over a COD, he actually took the city. And then he had taken, like, half of my territories over here were gone. My empire cut in half because he has so much war score with that double that it was completely ridiculous. He then declared a second war. No, sorry. I then declared a war on him immediately following that war. And all I did was leverage. I didn't attack him a single time. I had no units left for our previous war. I had tried to defend my land. My guys had all died trying. And what happened was I leveraged him down so quickly, but my war score was doubled at the end. I got to claim all of my land back and claim into his land as well. So I ended up claiming, like, this all ended up belonging to me for a time. I had claimed all the way into Thebes, actually. I had claims all the way into here because my war score was so high, you could claim so many things. It's completely ridiculous. And so then he was like, well, fine, I'll declare war on you again. And so then he declared war on me. He won that war because I didn't have any leverage left. And then he claimed back a bunch of the territories, but he couldn't claim, like, I made one of them a city, so he couldn't do that one, right? I mean, it was just sheer chaos. And you can see that played out in not only just in my wars, but it played out across the map. Because you can see, like, just claims and just really weird structures where just cities are left, right? Because if you haven't taken over a city in a war, you cannot claim it using your war score as a war resolution. You can vassalize people, which obviously Plosif was doing with all the war score that he had, but you can't claim cities unless you've taken them over, but you can claim all the lands attached to those cities. And so everyone ended up with just cities left. There's just cities dotting the land, because if you lost a war, there was 100% war score added to your opponent's total, and they just claim everything. There's so much war score to be able to make claims that it's almost completely ridiculous. And so you can, again, just everywhere. There's just single cities all over the place. Anyone who was at war with anybody was just ended up with their empires completely decimated. I mean, at one point when I had won the war against Plosif, I was destined to win the game until that 100% war score stayed on the board and Plosif declared war on me again, and then all of our territories flip-flopped hands back and forth during each of these wars. If there is one thing that I will tell you that I learned from this game, it is stay away from the 100% war score. Honestly, I didn't even like using it to my advantage because it felt so broken to have that much war score at the end of a war, to be able to claim just swaths of land deep into your enemy's territory after having done nothing. I didn't even wage war in mine. I just used leverage. And then to have that much war score at the end just created complete chaos across the map. So I try to avoid this if at all possible. You can see we eventually, the whole world kind of moved back on the other side of things, and we went away from this completely by the end of the game. But man, absolute chaos over here with the plus 100% war score when we were there. It was absolutely just a wild time, and there was just, land was changing hands. Every time a war would end, there would be huge flip-flops, just crazy stuff. So was this a good test on whether the barracks strategy could work? Probably not, because I was not prepared for that. I didn't really realize the ramifications of having that particular geopolitical axis pushed all the way on the World Congress side of things. Now I know, right? The other thing that happened in this particular game is because of all of the wars that were happening, because we were on that side of the spectrum, I didn't have any trade relationships. We had amenities problems beyond belief. We couldn't get food. Every time we had to trade for one thing, that trade route would get blocked or cut off by a war. And so trading became incredibly complicated. And so it was really, really messy. But let's go into the barracks strategy just so I can at least show off what the barracks strategy was and what the intention behind the barracks strategy was. So a while back, I had played a game where I started as the Mycenaeans, and I really enjoyed playing as the Mycenaeans, and so this really incepted the idea of, could a barracks strategy work? Because the Mycenaeans have the Cyclopean Fortress, and I will still argue that the Mycenaeans are a very good pick in the first era, because the Cyclopean Fortress is a very powerful thing. Not only is it going to get you the stability gains that a garrison is going to get you, it counts as a maker's quarter. That means it exploits all of the production around it. That's potent when you have a garrison, which you're getting fortification bonuses on, you're getting stability bonuses on, and now it effectively, again, is now a huge production center for you. So when you can, for example, if you look at our map, if you have a spot like this, where you have a ton of beautiful mountains around you, and you can tuck Cyclopean fortresses into mountains to exploit those lands where you otherwise would have had to like build out to, right? That's the other huge benefit of a garrison, is the garrison is free place. You could put the garrison anywhere. It doesn't have to be attached to your territory, so you can find optimal locations to be able to place down those Cyclopean fortresses where you're maxing out the ability to grab a particular set of production. That becomes very huge early on in the game, because now your production is way higher than it would have otherwise been, even if you were putting in a maker's quarter, because you're getting to put your Cyclopean fortress wherever you want, where it's maxing out that production. Now, later on, you're not going to get some of the bonuses that the maker's quarter might get as you surround that maker's quarter with other maker's quarters and things, but you're still getting a really, really good initial build, right? So I think the Mycenaeans are a really nice choice in the ancient era. Now, once you've moved from the ancient, there was not a good pick in the classical era that had a good garrison, or a garrison that was kind of worth using. So I transcended as the Mycenaeans because we needed to get as many of these Cyclopean fortresses out across our empire as possible. By transcending early in the game, and oftentimes this is where I do suggest a transcend, from the ancient to the classical is the best, and this is just logical, right? But it's the best time to transcend. Why? Because you're going to get that 10% fame gain, and now that this game was pre-patched, right? The latest patch has introduced that there's more of a bonus even, right? To transcending. So this early transcend gets you that 10% fame gain bonus on everything after it. So if you do a late transcend, you're not really gaining much. You're getting like 10% on just a couple of eras. But when you do an early transcend and you're getting 10% on like the next 4 eras, 5 eras actually in this particular case, right? That becomes very potent because you end up with a lot more fame than you might otherwise end up with. So I transcended pretty early on with the Mycenaeans, obviously the first transcendence you can do, and was able to get Cyclopean fortresses out basically across my entire empire, right? By the time you get to the end of the second era, if you're playing really effectively and efficiently, like outside of your New World claims or some like late settles, your whole initial kind of claim, you're going to be able to put districts in all of that, especially if it's a barracks or a garrison, and you can just put it wherever you want to, and you're not trying to wait to build out to a specific spot or something like that. So we transcended into the Mycenaeans. So Mycenaeans in the first two eras to get those Cyclopean fortresses out. And then we went into the English. Now, the English switches everything from what the Mycenaeans were. They have the stronghold, which counts as a farmer's quarter. So now you're getting the district fortification. You're getting the stability of a garrison. You're also getting the stronghold has huge bonuses for ranged units specifically, which plays really nicely into the special unit, the longbowman, which, in my opinion, is one of the most potent emblematic units in the game. The longbowman, because it maintains its range status just like an archer and has indirect fire specifically. When you upgrade to crossbowmen, they are direct fire. They can't lob their arrows over top of units, mountains, obstacles, right? Archers have a huge advantage over crossbowmen in that they have the variability in where they can shoot, and the range they have to get there without being blocked by other things is incredible. The longbowmen maintain that trait throughout this era, which is a whole era and a bit more than you're going to get out of your archers, and then everyone's going to be using crossbowmen. Your longbowmen are just as good or better than crossbowmen, and you've got that indirect fire trait on them. It is very potent to have that trait on these longbowmen. Plus, if you put them in these strongholds, yikes, they are very potent, which is one of the reasons why we did not go to war early in the game. I had longbowmen sitting in cities. If I was going to get attacked, I was going to wreck people. Probably I should have just gone on the aggressive with my longbowmen and take advantage of all those line of sight firing stuff that I had, but war was looking tough at that point. I was focused on garrisons and probably overly focused on garrisons. And so I didn't do that. I didn't work out that way. Should have probably, but I didn't do it. But now we have strongholds. So we're placing Cyclopean fortresses in the first two eras, getting production out of our garrisons, and now we're putting strongholds in every single one of our territories, which are acting as farmers' quarters. And again, they're free place. So if you look, we could go into our land and we could look for, let's look and find a stronghold. There should be one in here somewhere. Here's one, a stronghold, right? And you can see, you just plop it right in the middle of all the fields, and we reap the benefits of the food, right? We all of a sudden are getting all the food, and we didn't have to build out to it or anything like that, and so we can really optimize and maximize our use of space. You can see this is the Cyclopean Fortress, was taking advantage of space here. So you can see we've dotted the land with things, right? Here's another stronghold. So we're all over the place with these because we're getting that maximal placement for food out of our strongholds. Again, in the early modern, there wasn't a great, awesome option for putting, for getting more garrisons out that were going to be valuable to us, because there were just regular garrisons that didn't really do much for me. And so, or I can't remember which era that was, but we just decided to transcend, right? We'll take that 10% gain, and it allows me to put in more strongholds. In case I hadn't gotten them all in, now I can put them all in, make sure every single territory has a stronghold. So now we're maxed out on Cyclopean fortresses. Now we're maxed out on strongholds. We've got production coming from garrisons. We've got food coming from garrisons. We've also taken certain tenets with our faith. If we look at our faith over here, which I think I'm still following, the sacred garrison, if we check out our tenets here, we can see we took abstain, because abstain is just the best tenet in the game. And then we took protect the weak, +5 stability on garrison, +2 stability in religious districts. So we already have other bonuses, right, that we were getting that is additionally improving our garrisons. We also, if you go down to our civics, and I can't remember which civic it is, but you have civics that will also boost your garrisons. Here's one, minus 50% on garrison cost. You also have other ones that increase the, you have other civics that increase the stability that garrisons provide and things like that. So our garrisons are fantastic at this point, right? After that, we made the critical change, and the critical move was to Ethiopians. This was supposed to be our big game-changing move, because one thing we did not yet have was science. But now, all of the garrisons that we had put in throughout the entire game, which included both our special garrisons, our Cyclopean fortresses, and our strongholds, and any regular garrisons that we put in, are now getting +10 science on every garrison. So our science shoots up because we're getting plus 10 on every one of our territories has a Cyclopean fortress, a stronghold, and probably at least one regular garrison at this point. So you're talking about every territory getting approximately 30 science, more than likely, if not more, if we had additional garrisons, because we were placing garrisons kind of left and right at that point. So we're getting a huge science boost from the Ethiopians. That was supposed to be our game-changing moment. It did push us in the right direction until all of the wars broke out. And then unfortunately, the changes that the latest patch have brought, where the Americans now have their special district now does actually benefit and do things with garrisons. It didn't actually do anything for garrisons. It like benefited itself in some way because of being around garrisons, but it didn't make any sense for the Garrison Strat necessarily. It didn't gain me anything at the time. It's different now, and it would be very beneficial for this strategy to choose the Americans. But we were on the cusp of losing, and so I was like, well, the Japanese are available. We took the Japanese to try to push for a win, which of course failed. But one of the problems that we ran into really consistently was because we were focusing on garrisons, we never really had any stability issues until the wars all broke out and everything went wonky. But the problem is that we had very little science generation at the very beginning of the game, and we had almost no gold generation. You can actually see even at the end of this game, we're losing 700 gold per turn. We struggled on gold all game because of our focus on what we were doing with the garrisons. The other thing that happened in the middle of this game was, I believe, the change in trade happened, and so all of a sudden trade started costing a whole bunch. And so that kind of put this game into a slight state of chaos as well. When a game changes mid-patch, everything broke. From a trade standpoint, like everything was, I had already established all my trade. Now all of a sudden my trade was costing me a bunch. Then everyone went to war and it didn't matter anyway. But all of this to say, the Garrison Strat was really interesting. So we have Ombas all over the place. Look at what these Ombas are getting us. 2 industry, 1 money, 11 science, 13 stability, 3 influence. We've got, like, the numbers on our garrisons are really impressive, right? Here's a Cyclopean fortress getting us 13 industry, 1 money, 11 science, 18 stability, 1 influence, right? It's very intriguing. It's like a very intriguing strategy. You'll also notice that those numbers late game are kind of, they're not crazy. The strat is probably sound up through the first time you pick the English, maybe the Ethiopians to get that plus 10 science, but it's just not going to be enough, I don't think, especially at Humankind difficulty, to net you a win unless you diversify your strategy a little bit, at least more so than I did. So in the future, could you make this strategy work? Probably. You probably could, but you would have to not focus it as hard as I did, because it just didn't work. And you'd have to make sure that you don't end up with that plus 100% war score, because that was just game breaking when we ended up in that state. That was my first ever loss to an AI on Humankind difficulty. I'd won a lot of games against the AI. This was my first time where I lost by just 200 fame, and the wars were crazy. It was a very intriguing game. I enjoyed testing out the strategy, so we'll see if you've done the Garrison Strat in a different way and it really worked well for you. Let me know in the comments. Next week, we will start our next Let's Play series, and I don't want to be an alarmist, but we're going to try a particular strategy on Humankind difficulty. We're going to try to utilize Commons Quarters as much as we can. I'm calling the series Uncommonly Common, and I don't use Commons Quarters. I can count on 2 hands probably in my 2 years plus of playing this game how many Commons Quarters I've actually built. So we're going to try to build a strat around Commons Quarters. I don't think I'm going to commit as hard to that strat as I did with the Garrison strategy, because I think that that's what caused us to kind of, going all in on a strategy might cause you to lose, as it turns out. You might need to diversify a little bit. So next week, we will start a brand new Let's Play series of Humankind at Humankind difficulty, going for a Commons Quarter-centric strategy. That is a way I have never played the game. We're going to play all cultures that I have probably not played before, so it's going to be very exciting. Thank y'all for tuning in. If you like the content, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and that you're subscribed to the channel. Next week, brand new Let's Play series starts. Thank y'all for watching, and I will see you then for the new Let's Play.